I am Bruce Karasik, co-founder of the Jewish Republican Alliance. We're so happy to have Elaine Parker here with us today from the Job Creators Network. We'll be speaking with Elaine in just a few minutes, but first, with the presidential debates coming up on Tuesday night, I thought I'd come up with a few questions to propose for Chris Wallace to ask Joe on Tuesday night. So here they are. So, Joe, why did 162 Democrats in the House of Representatives just vote last week against an amendment that would designate anti-Semitism as a form of discrimination? And why did you not speak out against them? Why did you, Joe, on January 31st, when President Trump issued a China ban on travel to the United States, did you call it hysterical xenophobia and fear-mongering? And what would you have done differently, Joe? And how many additional lives would that have cost? And when your chief of staff called the ban premature, why did you not speak out at that time? Why, when your coronavirus advisor, Erwin Redlener, wrote that a global pandemic was not likely and predicted the chances of getting a lethal form of the virus negligible, did you not speak out? Why, Joe, did you not speak out when Nancy Pelosi encouraged crowds to come to Chinatown in San Francisco when she said, "Come to Chinatown"? Joe, why did you ignore the violence in the streets until your polls started to fail? Why did you not support the National Guard, Joe, coming out to help defend the American people, just as you ordered during the Obama administration? Why on March 12th, Joe, when your coronavirus advisor, Lisa Monaco, criticized President Trump for banning travel from Europe, did you not speak out? Joe, how can you possibly blame President Trump for higher unemployment when it's Democrat governors that have closed down the country? Joe, how did your son, Hunter, become so wealthy and receive such lucrative deals from China and Ukraine without any experience while you were vice president and the point person for those two countries? Joe, why did you recommend against killing Osama bin Laden? Joe, why did you say you were running for the United States Senate when you were running for president? Joe, when you were on Fox News Sunday, why did you call Chris Wallace Chuck and then said, "I just did Chris," and then said to Chris, "I don't know how you do this so early in the morning"? So Joe, how early in the morning is it too early for you in case of a national emergency? Please tell the American people so they can be prepared. Joe, why did you have anti-Semite Linda Sarsour speak at your convention? Joe, why did you meet with the racist, anti-Semite, anti-Christian Jacob Blake Sr. and not meet with any of the police officers' families whose loved ones were hurt or killed by Biden voters? Joe, why did you say there were 200 million people who died from coronavirus? Why did you call a town hall person, a voter, "Hey, fat," when he asked you a question? How, Joe, did you forget the words to the Pledge of Allegiance during a speech? And how did you forget the words to the Declaration of Independence during a speech and say, "You know the thing"? And finally, I think there's one quote that sums up, Joe, your whole campaign. And here's your quote: "There has never been anything we've been able to accomplish when we've done it together." Ha, think about that. So anyway, I'd like to now introduce fellow co-founder Mitch Silberman. Mitch, take it away.
Hello, JRA community. It is always so great when we are together. During the dreadful Obama years, then VP Biden said, "The most important thing right now is a three-letter word, JOBS." Now we can chuckle at that gap, one of his many, many gaps he's made over the years, but he's right about the importance of jobs. The thing is, his party seems to love employees but hate employers. I'm sorry, it just does not work that way. On the other hand, we have a commander-in-chief who is also a job creator-in-chief. He truly respects employers and employees because he values people that work hard, produce results, and get things done. In fact, candidate Trump said something very profound when he said he did not want to rob people of the dignity of hard work. That's a really amazing observation. Now think about it. Don't you think there's a huge difference between getting a check every month simply because you can fog a mirror versus earning a check every month because of your hard work, your discipline, your commitment, your perseverance? There's something truly magical about starting a new job, changing careers, or launching a new business. And of course, there's all the emotions involved, the risks, the rewards, the fear, the excitement, the winning, and yes, the losing. But as long as you get up one more time than you've been knocked down, you benefit from it. And in fact, what you earn pales in comparison to what you become. Now, there's been a common theme throughout all of our broadcasts, which is what an amazing, incredible country we are blessed to live in. And one of the many incredible things that makes America so great are free markets. In fact, capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any system in world history. We are very blessed that we live in an amazing country with great systems, incredible opportunities, and yes, fantastic people. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can to keep America, America. And on that note, I have the great pleasure of introducing our speaker today. This is an organization I've admired for so long, and I'm so excited to have Elaine Parker. She has more than 20 years of experience in the communication field, and she is the Chief Communications Officer for the Job Creators Network. She advocates on behalf of the country's 30 million small business owners. And she manages the JCN media program, marketing, as well as advertising and advocacy campaign. In her role with the Job Creators Network, she's a frequent guest on nationally syndicated radio shows, often seen on Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting. Today, Elaine will be speaking to us about keeping America, America, specifically Keep America, America. More than 20 million Americans are registered to vote, but don't when the election comes around. That's why the Job Creators Network is building the biggest get out the vote movement in conservative history. Elaine, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Mitch. I appreciate it. Bruce, great to see you.
Thank you, Elaine. So Elaine, for those who may not know about the Job Creators Network out there, can you tell us about your organization and its role in the advocacy of conservative principles?
Sure. We're a national small business advocacy organization, and we're founded by a man named Bernie Marcus. For those of you who don't recognize that name, he is the co-founder of the Home Depot. And Bernie founded us about 10 years ago. And I know you're thinking, wow, the Home Depot is not a small business, but if you know any history of the Home Depot, it was when he first started. And Bernie thinks of himself as a small business owner, and he does understand the trials and tribulations and the challenges that face small business owners, from having the right products on the shelf to making payroll, and dealing with high taxes and regulations. And he often would say that if he had to deal with the high regulatory environment under the previous administration, that he could have never started the Home Depot. Not that he couldn't have started it, but he probably wouldn't have gotten past about 8 stores. So can you imagine that? He's got, over 2,200 stores worldwide and employs over 400,000 people. He's not part of the Home Depot anymore, part of the management at all. But he started that store with his 2 partners. And like I said, he thinks of himself as a small business. And as a result, we advocate on behalf of the country's small business owners. A lot of people don't realize this, but there's 30 million small business owners in this country, and they employ 60 million people. So that's 90 million people dependent on the success of small business, and making sure that we have pro-growth policies like what we've seen for the last 4 years in lower taxes and less regulations to help small business grow and prosper.
Terrific, Elaine. Obviously, we're only about 40 days away from the election, but let's talk about the economy. We know it's still a top issue for Americans, and how do you think things are going? And what worries you as a person who represents nearly 30 million small business owners in America and their employees and their families?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to take a step back. These last 6 months, I kind of refer to us as being in this alternate realm with the pandemic, because when you think about everything before COVID, and I refer to that time frame as BC at this point, BC before COVID, and that's when We had an economy that was the lowest unemployment rate we had seen in a half a century. And across every single demographic across the board, we were seeing record low unemployment. We were seeing the fastest wage growth we had seen in a decade. We had complete stagnant wage growth under the previous administration. And suddenly we were seeing wage growth in areas where we hadn't, and we were actually seeing wages grow at a faster rate for hourly workers, blue collar workers, than for white collar workers. So all of the tax cuts that came out of the administration and the deregulation was directly hitting the middle class and small business owners, and we were seeing the economy prosper as a result. I know we had record stock market as well, and that helps all of our 401ks and pensions if you're a teacher and things like that. But when you look directly at what people are talking about at the kitchen table, it's what am I bringing home on Friday night, and is it more than it used to be? And what we know from the policies of this administration is that this economy was the best we had seen in half a century. Fast forward through 6 months to COVID, and we've got, some states are open and some aren't, and some governors have draconian orders to continue trying to keep states shut down. It's amazing to me that as much as we know about this virus, that we know who to protect. We know what populations we need to protect. And we know that we don't have to isolate the entire country to protect those populations. But we do have to look at the societal impacts of having had these shutdowns and what they have done, from misdiagnosis of cancer. I mean, cancer diagnosis is down. We had people who didn't get life-saving surgeries during the shutdown because elective surgeries were canceled. And for those of you who don't know what an elective surgery is, it's not because I wanted to get a heart valve transplant. It's because I needed my life saved for that. So these are not people who just decided to go and get a nip and a tuck and couldn't get it. These are people who needed life-saving surgeries. Even mastectomies for breast cancer, those were all on hold. Our children are not in school in many states, and we've got to get our kids back in school. So normalcy is what we need to get to. And the policies that this administration has had in place, in some areas, we are seeing a resurgence, and we're seeing people get back to work. And we've seen 10.4 million jobs come back in a mere 4 months, which is pretty incredible. We've seen the unemployment rate cut in half. And what that tells me is that the right policies are in place. We just have to get all the states open.
Elaine, there are a couple of issues that are important to me, and I'm sure are on the minds of the American people. One is safety and security, and the other is free speech. Now, you just recently had a video that was censored by the tech giants for simply showing that there's real violence on the streets. I'm concerned that a lot of Americans are not even getting the true story. They're not hearing what they need to hear to make an intelligent decision. So there were actually a lot of small business owners that were hurt, many of them minorities. Could you speak to all those things and let us know what your feelings are on that?
Yeah, so just a few weeks ago, we launched the Get Out the Vote effort, Keep America, America. The website is keepamericaamerica.com. And it is the largest Get Out the Vote effort in conservative history. And we are working with all the conservative talk show radio hosts, from Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Mike Gallagher. I can go down the list, but if you say one, we're working with them. And we're reaching out to their 61 million fan base to help them understand how they can help keep America, America. And this website provides all of that information. These are folks who basically, they're tired. They don't want to give donations anymore. What they want to do is do something and make a difference. And we know that this will make a difference because we can provide all of the information to voters on up-to-date information on when their early voting starts, how to get an absentee ballot, where they need to go where they need to vote, and they can share all this information with their friends and family. They can bring. We're going to encourage them to get 2 people to vote with them because this election is going to be about turnout, nothing else. turnout. And we've got to get people to turn out to vote. If you can go pump gas and you can go grocery shopping, you can go vote. And this website will give you all the information you need. With respect to the video that you mentioned and being censored on YouTube, as part of the campaign, we created a video to talk about our personal security. We believe this is an election about security. It's our personal security, our economic security, and our health security are all on the ballot this year. And as we were watching all of these riots unfold across the nation, we kept hearing this narrative that these were peaceful protests. And yet our small business owners who were in these cities across the nation kept calling us and saying, it is not peaceful here. It is not. We are scared for our personal safety. Our businesses are being looted and robbed and burned down. And so we went on YouTube and found a lot of local media coverage in each of those cities from Seattle to New York, and found local news coverage on YouTube. And we compiled that by city in about a 30-second commercial. And at the end of the commercial, we simply asked, is your city next? And then directed viewers to our website. Immediately, or within a few days, YouTube slapped an inappropriate content restriction on the video, which essentially requires viewers to log in, certifying that they're over 18. And they said it was too violent. Imagine that. News coverage that was publicly available and being shown was too violent to be on YouTube. But that same coverage that is the source video for our commercial, still out there, not labeled at all. We can't promote the video now to new viewers. We can't spend ad dollars. And it's just unfairly, once again, unfairly censoring conservative content that the tech giants don't agree with. And our social media platforms have become like America's town square. It's where we debate ideas. It's where we share things. And to censor one point of view is a huge threat to free speech. And so I've been talking in the media all day, what feels like all day, every day for the last week on it.
That's truly astounding, Elaine, and it's maddening as well. One of the biggest questions we get from JRA members is really a simple one. What can I do to help conservatives get out the vote? As you mentioned, the election's all about turnout, as everyone knows. Can you please talk to our viewers about the reason why the Job Creators Network came up with your Keep America campaign?
Well, it actually came from, we were speaking with some of our contacts at Salem, at Salem Radio, because we do a lot of work with them. And the radio hosts there were telling them that their listeners were calling in asking the same question. What can I do to make a difference here? And so we thought of, let's do a get out the vote effort and provide all of this information in one place. I mean, look, the left has been doing this for years. And they have a very, very strong get out the vote effort. And conservatives just have really never done it. And so we, with the backing of some people who were very interested in getting the vote out, we put together this campaign. And I would recommend to your viewers to go to the website, keepamericaamerica.com, sign up. And every week you'll get new information that you can either act upon yourself or share with your friends and family. You can take a look at where your district is. You can find out all of the up-to-date information. You mentioned, I think at the top, that there's 20 million people out there who are registered voters and don't show up to the polls every election. And what we know is that elections are won by thousands in the Electoral College, not millions. And when you think about the just three states in 2016, Michigan was won by 11,000 votes, Wisconsin was won by 23,000 votes, and Pennsylvania was won by 44,000 votes. And so every vote is going to make a difference. And I know we say this every single election, this is the most important election of our lifetime. But this is the most important election of our lifetime, from taxes to our health care. We're staring at a Medicare for all, a government-run, top-down system that Joe Biden wants to implement and hoist upon America and take away our choices and our healthcare freedoms and put our health in the hands of bureaucrats. And we can't let that happen. We just can't let that happen. We've got to get out and we've got to have our vote heard, and we have to vote for the free enterprise. We have to vote for our freedom of speech. We have to vote for our freedoms in general, because America itself is on the ballot.
That's very true. And there's another important issue that I want to bring to your attention. I'm sure you're already aware of it. Many Americans in their jobs are afraid to speak out, and they're surrounded by people on the left. And when they do speak out, or even silent, their jobs are lost, their businesses are threatened, their personal safety is threatened, and they have no place to go. And I know we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, but I would like to, again, propose how we can work together as two organizations to have a landing spot for people when they speak out and they lose their job just for being conservative, to be scooped up by conservative businesses who would really love to have them.
No, that's a really interesting idea. And I have heard that. I hear it a lot, obviously, in academics. They say, about 80% in the higher institutions of the professors are liberal, and there's a very quiet 20%. I have a friend of mine who's a conservative professor at a university here in Florida where I live. I won't disclose who he is because he has to stay quiet. But I mean, he talks to me about that environment as well. As far as small businesses, it is a little scary and when I've talked to our small business owners, it is scary for them to speak out publicly. And we do have small business owners that we work with in the media who are willing to speak out. And some of them have suffered, we'll call it repercussions, or, nasty emails, or, Facebook posts and things like that, because they speak out publicly about different policies that benefit them. But the reality is, what I find with our small business owners is they're not overly partisan, but they know what policies help them survive as a small business. $15 an hour minimum wage, that doesn't help them survive as a business. Obamacare healthcare plans that they can't afford to buy health insurance for their employees, that doesn't help them. High taxes in some states where they were paying as much as 50% between state and federal taxes before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that doesn't help them. But when you start to see regulations being slashed at the rate that they've been slashed over the last 4 years, when you see the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act implemented and small businesses are able to reinvest in their businesses, they don't need to be political to get that point across. All they need to do is talk about how much they're doing with their tax cuts. I've got a wonderful story of a man in Pennsylvania who owns a chemical manufacturing company, small town in Pennsylvania. So they need to retain their youth and not have the youth leave. They need employers like him. As a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, he was able to double the size of his facility, hire 30 people, increase all of his employees' wages by about 25%. And for the first time in a decade that he's been open, offer a 401k retirement plan. He's most proud of that. He loves telling that story. But those are incredible stories. That's what I do. I get those stories out there.
That's terrific. Elaine, your website really helps people with friends and relatives out of state, or maybe friends in assisted living centers or nursing homes, or serving their county in another state. Can you please talk about how our viewers can help make certain that these people get the information that they need to vote, whether it's mail, person, voting in person early? I mean, it really could be a game changer.
Yeah, so once you sign up on keepamericaamerica.com, your zip code's in there. And so the system reads where you're at, and it will tell you when you can request your absentee ballot. It will tell you when you can start early voting. And these emails will come on a regular cycle based on that time schedule in your area. The system's pretty sophisticated in that regard. And of course, then we're reaching out on a weekly basis just with issue reminders about what's at stake for this election. So those are, and then there's also an opportunity to share the information with friends and relatives and people you're going to church with, or and talk to them about the issues and get them to sign up so that they can get the same information. So yes, you could provide information about your grandmother in, who's in an assisted living facility, and help and make sure that she gets to vote and request her, help her request her absentee ballot, or make sure she gets to the polls, one or the other. Like I said, if you can pump gas and go to the grocery store, you can definitely go out and vote.
I have a question from the audience. This one is from Rita R. Her concern is about socialism and communism. So many immigrants have come to the United States and have fled countries where socialism and communism has failed, has hurt small business, and come here to the United States, which was always the land of opportunity. The concern now is if Joe Biden and the left gets in, how do you think that would affect both small business and the overall economy?
I mean, look, it's going to be a war on job creators. I mean, that's exactly what it's going to be, is a war on job creators. And we're seeing that in a very effective populist movement with our younger people. Those are the folks that I think, the kids that we need to reach with a message of why the free enterprise is so important, and how it allows everybody to pursue their American dream. There's not a there is no other country that offers the kind of freedoms and opportunity that America does. And it's because of our system of free enterprise. And I'll go back to our founder, Bernie Marcus. I mean, he literally came from nothing. He grew up, his parents were immigrants, grew up very poor in New Jersey. But he saw this country. His parents always told him it was the land of opportunity. And, he worked very hard his whole life. And he wanted to be a doctor. He didn't get into medical school, so he went to pharmacy school. And ultimately, he ended up in the hardware business, and that kind of worked out pretty well for him. But he was fired at the age of 48 and broke before he started the Home Depot. And he went on to start the Home Depot 2 years later. And the rest is history. And that was at 50 years old. So you don't see those kinds of success stories in other countries. And he loves to talk to younger people about about his story, because it helps them understand. And now his ability to give back in such a great way to charitable causes, from autism to cancer research to, he built the Atlanta Aquarium. And, those are things that, he's only able to do because of the success that he was afforded in this country.
Elaine, I want to go back to something you said before about most small business owners are not necessarily political, but they understand policies that help them or hurt them. And I couldn't agree more. But here's some of the frustration I've seen. They don't understand they don't see the link between who they vote for and the destruction of their business. Like, I literally spoken to small business owners who vote Democrat over and over again, and then complain to me how the government is destroying their business. And I say, don't you see the connection? How do you address that?
So Bernie originally founded Job Creators Network with the idea that he wanted to educate Americans about how public policies impacted jobs. And so through our foundation, we have an educational program called Employer to Employee Education, E2E. And what it is the idea we provide educational materials. They're nonpartisan, but helping people understand, how profit is made. It's not evil, but how is it made? And help people understand how the Electoral College works. From civics to fiscal literacy, all of these educational materials exist, and they're done at about a high school level. Most of them are actually animated videos. I grew up with animated something called Schoolhouse Rock. Okay, whenever I say that, everyone nods their head. So we don't sing in our videos. But we do take pretty complex issues and boil them down to about 2 minutes or less to help get a point across, like taxes. Corporations don't pay taxes. People do. So if you're going to raise taxes on a corporation, it rolls downhill, because guess what they're going to do? They're going to raise the cost of their goods. So the little guy always pays. So when you hear a politician saying we're going to raise taxes on those nasty, evil corporations, guess what? You're just going to pay more for the product. So it's helping people connect those dots in a nonpartisan way, because and we do it through the employers. We actually give the materials to the employers to share with their employees and help them understand, that they have a stake in this game, and that public policy impacts them and their family and their paychecks. So it's about paychecks, not politics.
I know that Bernie is a Jewish Republican, and as are we. One thing that we have noticed in recent years is the rise of anti-Semitism, and it seems to largely be supported and coming from one side of the aisle. But I think the American people need to speak out against that and not be afraid to do that. But I'm concerned about the safety and security of all Americans, but also of Jews, and the rise of anti-Semitism. What are your thoughts?
I do see it from one side, and it's disheartening as well, but the hypocrisy that comes from that side on this issue is, I can't believe they can stand in front of a media camera and say the things that they say. It's just appalling. Look, I don't have the golden answer here on this one, because it's just such hypocrisy at this point. And yeah, we do have to worry about people's safety for sure. And there's a selection. There's definitely an obvious selection of what they want to speak out on and what they don't, and they stay quiet on certain issues like that. But yet there you see rioting in the streets on other issues. So it is very disheartening to see that kind of hypocrisy, especially in 2020.
Elaine, you talk about rioting in the street. I think you mean the peaceful protesters, don't you?
That's exactly what I mean.
Okay, good. Okay, just want to make sure. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes, right? So we have a really good question from Howard W. in our audience. And he prefaces it by saying, considering the overwhelming request from donations from various candidates and PACs, obviously, as a small business owner or an individual, you could go bankrupt giving to them all. So from your perspective, you're helping 30 million small business owners in your organization. What do you think is the best place to direct funds to make the best use of that money? And of course, helping the goal of, keeping America, keeping America great. How would you answer that for Howard?
Well, I think as a voter, you look at what your priorities are. As a small business owner, I'll give a shameless plug. We do a lot for small business owners. And so if you want to direct it to an organization that really focuses on the needs of small business owners, an organization like ours, we operate on the charitable givings of people who like the things that we do. From a candidate perspective, I tend to want to give directly to the candidates versus the parties themselves. That's just my personal, if I had to order it, I would give to the candidates themselves first. But yeah, you could go broke with how many text messages I get per day from different candidate campaigns. It is hard to prioritize it, but you've got to look at what affects you personally. And there are a lot of really good organizations out there that are working like ours, like yours, that are working, for different missions. And those are worth looking at too, because we kind of live and die on the generosity of the people we're helping.
Elaine, there's a request from our audience to be able to view the video that was taken down. How do they find it?
If you go to keepamericaamerica.com and just scroll down, it's at the bottom. There are two of them there, actually.
Let's see, another anonymous question. I'm a small business owner, and I love what I'm hearing about JCN, but what tangible results would I expect to see or experience by supporting JCN for my business?
So as a member of Job Creators Network, you would receive the E2E materials to share with your employees. So our educational program comes as a member. Beyond that, we do updates and we do newsletters and things like that, and keeping you updated on how we are making an impact and advocating in Washington for pro-growth policies. Beyond that, as a small business owner, if you are somebody who wants to engage and get very involved, I run an advocate program for the organization, which is widely credited for having gotten the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act across the finish line. And that is working with small business owners to actually place them in the media. I have a team of writers that work on developing op-eds for them. They media train them. They get them on radio, TV, and talking about policy issues. And so that is a way to really engage on different issues, whether it's taxes or we've been doing a lot on reopening society. And we're also doing a lot on healthcare since the new healthcare plan has been announced by the administration. We have a campaign called Healthcare for You, which is a patient-centered free market healthcare plan. It's healthcareforyou.com if anybody wants to take a look at the plan. But it's been endorsed by former HHS Secretary Tom Price and Newt Gingrich, and it's a good plan, and it falls right in line with what the president laid out last night. It's personalized healthcare, and the tenants are crossover, and we're excited actually that they embraced a lot of what we were proposing. So as a member, it depends on how you want to be involved with Job Creators Network. I do things by campaigns. I have a healthcare campaign. I have a Get Out the Vote campaign. I have a campaign to help reopen society and get our kids back to school. It's called Flatten the Fear. And we had the tax cuts campaign. And in each of those, I have an advocate program, and I get small business owners out there talking about the issues in the media. You are credible messengers because you are on the front line. So the message is super important. That messenger, even more important. And so it's hard to find people who are willing to give me their time to do that because you're busy, you're running your business.
Elaine, Shirley S. is already trying to find your website, Keep America America. But I guess there's another similar website that she has found called Keep America American, which is not a favorable site. So are you aware of that? And maybe you can tell our viewers the difference.
Ours is keepamericaamerica.com.
Right. Okay, so there's another site out there that may be confusing to our viewers. We just wanted to make sure that they're going to Keep America America.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Elaine, we have a question from Gary G. I am a small business owner. How do you recommend I talk with my employees about the importance of voting the right way?
So you can utilize some of the educational materials we have, but what I found, so one of my favorite stories is from a small business owner in Seattle. He's a Burger King franchisee. He started out as an employee of Burger King as a young guy, grew up, learned the ropes, and ultimately owns now over 30 stores. So really successful. I mean, when I interviewed the guy on video, he really came to tears talking about how this country has given him so much. But he was the focus of the Fight for 15 campaign for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And two of his guys joined the organization, and they were trying to unionize the stores, Burger King. And so he said, I took him in the back of the store, and he said, and I sat down and I opened up the books and I said, and I showed them how much it costs to run the store. versus how much with payroll and everything like that, so that they could understand that for every dollar I brought in, I was only keeping this, these few pennies of it. And he said, and I turned them. He said, honesty and having an open door and not talking about a candidate was the best thing, is to be honest that, of what is going to happen. Bernie used to do something at the Home Depot. They called them Bernie's Road Shows, where he'd go out into the stores and he'd host town halls. And he would talk to his employees about what was happening in Washington, D.C. and what policies were being proposed. And he would tell them how it was going to impact their business and ultimately them. And it wasn't a threat. It wasn't if this guy wins, you're getting fired. But it was if this policy becomes real, this is what it's going to do to, this is the impact it's going to have on our stores, or on our ability to conduct business, or on our ability to grow, or on our ability to provide health insurance. I mean, there was a multitude of ways to talk about it without saying, vote for that guy. But you, as a small business owner, you are more trusted by your employees than you realize. And what you say and what you're willing to share with them about that, and have an open door about it, has a huge impact on them. Because if they understand exactly how these policies are impacting the business and ultimately their paychecks, they care. They're invested.
Elaine, a lot of our audience members have kids that are either in colleges or universities that are either trying to choose a career path or have just graduated or about to graduate. Does the Job Creators Network get involved with colleges and universities or help students with career paths?
No, it's not a job placement service.
Okay.
When we say it's a Job Creators Network, it's a network of job creators, but it's not an employment service. We want to reach those college students to make sure that they're understanding the value of the free enterprise, and that's how they're going to be able to find jobs, as if the job creators exist.
That's very true. Very true.
Something else I want to ask you, it's a little bit, it's still a project at JCN, but it's a little different topic. But can you talk to us a little bit about Flatten the Fear? I think it's really important.
Yeah, so last year when we launched our healthcare initiative, I recruited, I talked to you about, I said the Advocate program is one of our most important programs that I run with our small business owners. Well, I replicated that Advocate program, but with physicians, because who's more credible to talk about healthcare reform than doctors? So I media trained doctors and developed them to start talking about healthcare. And then when COVID hit, healthcare got pushed off the table for a while until yesterday. And as the country started to reopen, there was such a concerted effort by the media and by governors and mayors across the country to keep us shut down and to keep this economy, keep people out of work, and keep the federal unemployment benefits flowing, so that people were making more money to stay home than to actually go back to work, and scaring people. And so we decided to launch this campaign called Flatten the Fear, and put a microphone in front of doctors who have tested and polled to be the most trusted voice on COVID issues. And we've been writing probably 20 media hits a week across the country, local news stations, radio, national radio, local radio, op-eds across the country from doctors, talking about the safety, that we can reopen society with proper precautions, who the vulnerable people are, what some of the statistics mean. It's been an education process, and getting them out there. And it's been very impactful, especially on the school opening side of things. And I've been really involved in it myself, and doing a lot of interviews, not only as the head of communications for JCN, but as a mom. I can wear two hats there. I wear multiple hats, but I can wear two hats there, wanting to get my kids back in school and talking about the overall societal effects. Like I said, they've been tremendous And, you know, Dr. Fauci has been put out there as the guru on everything. And it's mainly because he seems to lean towards being closed down, and that we can't conquer this and get out there. We know who the vulnerable age groups are. We know who the vulnerable people are, and we can protect those folks. I like to say that we can isolate the few and protect the many without having to isolate the many to protect the few.
Elaine, I noticed on your website you have a quote that says, "Do a little, do a lot, do your part." Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so originally when we launched the Get Out the Vote campaign, we were asking people to bring 10 people to the polls to get them to vote. And what we realized was we were asking a lot. And some people were writing us and saying, I've got a big enough car to take 10 people to the polls. And what we meant was help them get their absentee ballot, or not literally driving them to the polls, but if you could, literally drive them to the polls. But there were some people that I felt like, well, what if they didn't want to do that much? But they wanted to do something, and they were willing to go vote and send a couple emails. So we thought, gosh, if we've got some people who want to do a little and some people who want to do a lot, but they're all willing to do their part, then we could really have a successful Get Out the Vote campaign. And so that was the point of it, is it's going to take the sum of the whole to get everybody out there to vote. And some of us are going to be able to do a lot more than others, but anything you can do to help get that vote out, because that is what it's going to be about, is getting out the vote and overcoming a lot of challenges with COVID and the fear and mail-in ballots and all of the mess that hopefully we have a definitive result on November 3rd, or at least by the morning of November 4th.
I don't know. I've heard the Biden team has 600 lawyers lined up, so we'll see. We hope we get a definitive result on the 3rd, a favorable one. I've got one more question from the audience here, Elaine. This is from Howard S. Says, I have a pre-existing condition and I own a very small business and I have no corporate or group health care. So if Obamacare goes away, do you expect the protection of pre-existing conditions to go away as well?
No, not one bit. And I don't expect Obamacare to just go away and then nothing until something comes. I don't believe, from what I've seen and what I've read in the courts and some of the lawyers that I've spoken with, who are the lawyers working on the Supreme Court case, they specifically will not, no matter what the Democrats are saying, they specifically will keep this plan in place until there is a replacement. And there are multiple, we all agree as a country that we need to cover pre-existing conditions. We absolutely start from 100% agreement, violently in agreement on it. We just disagree on how to get there. And so when I hear that people say just because you want to read that Obamacare will fall in the Supreme Court and go away, that means pre-existing conditions go away, that is entirely untrue. There are just other ways to get there. Our plan with Healthcare for You has multiple ways to get there, and it's not just one process that does it. It starts with reducing the regulations of Obamacare. That is a top-down approach, those essential benefits that requires a one-size-fits-all for every state, the federal requirements, all the states to provide the same kind of level of benefits. And if you take that away and you allow individual states to regulate their own insurance markets, they could then create a vibrant, competitive insurance market and unleash the power of the free markets, so that if you are somebody who needs a Cadillac plan, it'll be available. But if you are somebody who only needs a catastrophic plan, it'll be available. And if you want something in the middle, that'll be there too. But what will happen as a result of more plans is we'll have more competition. And there's no arguing with more choice creates more competition, and therefore prices fall, because we see it in every single industry. And I'll use LASIK surgery as the example. LASIK surgery came out in 2000, and since 2000, in the 20 years, the surgery's gotten better and it's gotten cheaper. The price is down 50% and it's not covered by insurance at all. So that's a direct example of free market in our healthcare system. But if you reduce those regulations, you create a market that has choice and competition and price transparency. You're going to see prices come down. Right now, you've got $17 billion a year in Obamacare subsidies. If the prices come down because Obamacare falls and people can afford to buy insurance, then you've got $17 billion that are freed up to help with the guaranteed coverage pools for people who are in a pre-existing condition category, so that those people aren't driving up the cost of insurance for people who don't have pre-existing conditions. Then you've also got the competition factor. And then you've got, for people who decide that they want to, because we're working on expanding HSAs. So if you have an HSA and you're able to buy your own policy instead of having your small business, your employer provide insurance, have your employer fund your HSA as your benefit, you buy your insurance and then you own it like your car insurance and your life insurance, and you take it with you from job to job. Then you never have a lapse in coverage and you never have a pre-existing condition. So there are multiple ways to get there. But having a one-size-fits-all government approach where everybody has to have the same coverage and premiums are driven up in such a way, in a way that nobody can afford their deductibles. We all have cards in our pockets now. Actually, we all don't. Obamacare added 8 million people to get cards in their wallets. They don't necessarily have access to coverage.
Elaine, we have a question from James B. And it's a concern that I share, but this happened in Orange County, California, and probably a lot of other places where ballot harvesting was allowed. And there were 6 Republican candidates who all won in 2018 on election night. And over the next 3 weeks, there were box loads of harvested ballots that came in and overturned all of those elections in favor of the Democrats. I think it's a concern for people who want to go out and vote, thinking that their vote is not going to count because there's a lot of fraud going on. Can you please address that and let us know your thoughts?
I'm not familiar with that story, but I obviously, like all of you, I'm seeing stories around the country of finding, ballots, boxes of ballots in places and things like that. I mean, I think it's important that we show up to vote. Most states have early voting now. I think November 3rd is going to be long lines and hours and hours of waiting. I say get out and vote in person and vote early. I think there's a reason why the president wants people to show up and vote and verify that their ballot has been counted. I think it's a real concern. The lawsuits that I'm hearing, Mark Zuckerberg has invested $250 million into some organizations that are putting up boxes around the country where people can drop their ballots off in those boxes. There'll be no way to know when those ballots go in there. So if they go in on November 4th and the election's over, how long do we keep counting ballots? 5 days after the election? 10 days after the election? As they show up, or they find them in someone's drawer? We have to have election integrity, and we have to, otherwise our votes don't count. So showing up to the polls, I think, is the best way to get your ballot counted.
All excellent points. Elaine, we're going to wrap up. You just had plethora of information, just fantastic work that you and your company is doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Bruce is muted. Bruce, you got to unmute yourself.
Oh, I don't know how that happened.
There we
I'm
go.
unmuted now, I think. Elaine, we wanted to thank you for being here. We look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
So everyone, thank you for being here today. If you want more information about the Jewish Republican Alliance, or would like to become a member or make a donation of any kind, go to our website, jewishrepublicanalliance.org. Now more than ever, we need your support to continue to make America great and allow us to unite and energize conservatives to take action on behalf of America and Israel, we want to give you the ammunition you need to be able to discuss the world of ideas and in the world of politics and around our communities. You can see all of our past shows on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and search Jewish Republican Alliance. You'll see all our past shows there. You can see us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Until we meet again, we wish you a great week, a great weekend, a peaceful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom and Lashana Tova.
Lashana Tova.